The chair recognizes the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Meyer, for 5 minutes.
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 5 minutes and revise and extend remarks.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I rise today for the last time as a member of the 117th Congress. I do not seek to dwell on the circumstances of my departure, although it does bring to mind a few lines from Yeats's Second Coming. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Perhaps it takes a cataclysm like World War I to capture the naked and malevolent cynicism of our politics. Yeats also well captured the harrowing consequence of elite ineptitude that precipitated the slaughter of tens of millions. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold, mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. I read and reread those words while flying out of Hamid Karzai International Airport last August, during the shameful end to 20 years of America's war in Afghanistan. What I saw on the ground during that waking nightmare exemplified some of the best of the American men and women in uniform, but it also reflected the haplessness and incompetency of American policymaking. It's easy to question why we are here in this chamber, what our purpose is, and what it is we seek to achieve. I did not enter this body as some wide-eyed innocent. 3 years in war zones had stripped me of that. But what I did not anticipate until I got here was how many of the problems we are confronting are problems of Congress's own making. Look at Afghanistan. Across the rotunda, we are fighting an uphill battle to pass the Afghan Adjustment Act so that our allies who risked their lives to support our operations aren't deported back to the same hell that 13 American service members sacrificed their lives to rescue them from. This should not be a Herculean task. Yet senators have the privilege of wrapping their hands around the neck of critical legislation and strangling it in back rooms. If they want to slit the throat of the Afghan Adjustment Act, let them do it on the Senate floor in full view of the allies and veterans they are betraying. The reason, in the first place, why we have to pass the Afghan Adjustment Act is due to the failure of our war in Afghanistan, a failure abetted by decades of Congress's lax oversight of the President and his Department of Defense. To solve this, I push for Congress to take back its war powers, to take back that constitutional responsibility. But even when it comes to Congress asserting its own prerogative, this body has shown itself unwilling to do its job. The current budget negotiations taking place on the other side of the rotunda also show a Congress unwilling to confront the very basic task of passing a budget on time. The last time we had a budget passed before the fiscal year started, I was in second grade. And here we sit, 72 hours before a government shutdown, while the Senate pats itself on the back for dropping a 4,155-page omnibus bill at 2 a.m. yesterday morning. When Congress is incapable of solving problems of its own making, how can the American people have any faith that we can tackle the problems arising from the broader world? What hope do we have of outcompeting China, of winning this coming century, if we can't even get out of a mess of our own making? We need the best to regain their convictions, to set an example of what clear-eyed leadership looks like both at home and abroad. We need to hold the worst to account and reprise the moral resolve that has led us through dark times in this country many, many times before. Too many have sacrificed too much for us to squander the opportunity before us, the opportunity to rise to the challenge of this moment, to set aside petty squabbles, the opportunity to build on the promise of limited government, economic freedom, and individual liberty, the promise that underpins the American dream. While I will not be in the 118th Congress to fight for the government our great people deserve, I remain steadfast to my commitment to make our nation at last worthy of the sacrifices made in its name. And I pray that the next Congress learns from the mistakes of the last 2 years, that we learn from the mistakes of decades before, and have the courage necessary to fulfill the promise of a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Thank you, and I yield back.